You are listening to Exploring Sacred with your host, Denise Iwana Francisco, on the Temple Within Radio and Digital Media Network, giving voice to the sacred.
Good morning, everybody. Take 2 here on Exploring Sacred. This is a first. And just a reminder about the importance or the potency, let's say, of Mercury retrograde. Yesterday it was my iPhone. Today it's this system. So if somebody could write in the chat room, can you hear me now? If somebody could answer that, that would be great. That would be terrific. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead with the show this morning. And if nothing else, it'll be recorded and posted. Ancestry.com, 23andMe, Nat Geo. A lot of people right now offering us a way to find out who our ancestors were, who our ancestors are. And as many of you know, it's been kind of the journey for me since mid to late November of 2018, getting my first Ancestry kit completed as a gift, so that I could find out who my ancestors are, who my ancestors were. And lo and behold, through the ethers of digital media and the waves that connect us these days in the hidden realms called social media, I was contacted by ancestors or relatives from today, cousins. And what a beautiful surprise for me to have those hands and hearts reach out to me through ancestral DNA teaching or testing, through Facebook. Good morning, Nikki. Thank you for that confirmation. Sometimes it just takes another try, right? Life is like that. Sometimes you got to give it another go so that the rubber can continue to meet the road. For a lot of us wanting to know who we are in our ancestral lineage, well, for a lot of us, there's a stirring inside of us wanting to know. Some of us are really like history geeks. Me, myself, and I love history. I have always loved history. Since I was a very young girl, my home is filled with volumes of world history, American history, Native American history, all of those sorts of things. I love it. It's always intrigued me. Even though I was not sure of my own ancestry as an adopted child, history of the world has always fascinated me. And in this modern time, we are now able to find out our own history and the characters in our history, those that exist currently and those that perhaps we were unaware of. A long time ago here in the United States, for a lot of our ancestors, when we arrived, our ancestors arrived here at the shores of North America, one of the things that they were committed to doing was leaving who they were and where they came from behind, so that they could become fully American, whatever they thought that was going to mean for them. And many of them brought trinkets, and many of them brought small heirlooms, right, in their traveling cases, in their great big chests. But most of who they were, except for their language or perhaps their ancestral language's accent, stayed in their home country, the country of their ancestors. Names were changed. The English language was learned. Children were sent off to Americanized schools. And who we were was left behind for the most part, except for maybe some aunties and grandmas who kept the stories alive, who kept the customs and the traditions alive. And in this country, customs and traditions for some people became something that was frumpy or useless, or what are you talking about that for? We're here now. And as the pendulum tends to swing from one side of the time continuum to the other, I believe the pendulum has swung back to the place where people are asking, but where did my people come from? This past weekend, or this past week, last week, I had one of those movie moments, those Dreamtime moments where, because I was blessed enough to have biological ancestors reach out to me, thanks to DNA testing and Facebook, I was able to meet my first and second cousins, some of them, not all of them, in Georgia, in Hawkinsville, Georgia. And it was one of those moments in time, frankly, I never thought that I would ever experience because of the circumstances surrounding my adoptions. I never felt as though that would be something that would ever happen for me. And yet it did. I believe the ancestors intervened. Right? Coming to understand who I am through DNA testing answered some questions about who I am, why I feel like I do, why I'm attracted to the things that I am attracted to, why some places feel like home to me, why some peoples feel home to me, why certain foods taste really good to me, why I find comfort where I find it, and why I find discomfort and ill at easeness, if that is a word, where I find it. Knowing that my people, at least according to 23andMe, my people on my mother's side of the table, in my maternal side, all began in Africa and Italy and Sardinia. Way back in time, in the 1400s. And through time, the ancestors moved. They traversed the world. And they met others, and they married, and they had children, and they became. And ultimately, many of them came here to North America. One of the bright moments of being in Georgia was the evening that I got to meet my father's sister, Dorothy, Dot, Aunt Dot, Mama Dot. And one thing that she said that really struck me was this. She said, in her beautiful Georgian drawl, one of the things she said that people often ask me is, Dot, what are you? What are you? My Aunt Dorothy is a very exotic, beautiful woman with jet black hair and these amazing high cheekbones and these piercing blue, kind of green eyes. Stunning woman of 70 some years, beautiful woman. And she looked at me and she said, first and foremost, I tell people I'm an American. I am an American. And she looked at me and she said, but we Americans come from a lot of people to become American. But I'm an American. And I didn't really have time to process those words in my head in that moment, but clearly they've stuck with me, and I wrote them down later that evening. Aunt Dot went on to explain about what she knew about our American Indian heritage at that point. And great big long beautiful conversation, lots of hilarity ensued. And it brought me to a moment this past week in deciding what it was we would maybe talk about this morning is, she's right, we are Americans. Both my adoptive father and my biological father were warriors. They were warriors. Both served in the United States Army. The Sarge also served in the Air Force. Between the two of them, they served 5 tours of war. Between Korea, Cambodia, and Vietnam. 5 between 2 men. Very American, right? And who were they? Who were their people? Who were my biological father's people? One of the things that I had to laugh about while I was down there is finding the commonalities. I mean, not only, if any of you saw the photos, you understand that, oh my goodness, those King girls, they do look alike. There's no mistaking. There's no mistaking the King line. And that brought great joy, because to see a group of people for the very first time, other than your own children who look like you at 56 years old, that was a moment of pure bliss for me. And moving on from that, listening to their sense of humor, what they find funny, what they like to eat, what they watch on TV, and learning that even though I wasn't raised with them, the similarities were right there. In fact, last night I was talking to my cousin Bobby Jean on the phone, and she said, well, what are y'all doing? And I said, well, we're getting ready to watch Oak Island. Right, The Curse of Oak Island. Todd and I love that show. And she started to laugh and she said, oh my goodness, me and my husband, we never missed that show. We always watch that show. And I said, well, I want one of those Bobby Dazzler t-shirts. I love Gary. The metal detector specialist, Gary. And she started to laugh and she said, me too. Those things. One of the comments that was often made during our time together, because one of the things that us King girls all share is that all of our fathers have passed. All of the King men, as in our fathers, have passed. And we all agreed that they were all colluding with one another behind the scenes in their heavenly places of being at this time to make sure that this party happened and future parties happened and dialogue and healing happened and continues to happen. And what about the ancestors before that? I'll tell you, one of the most amazing things for me to hear at this time in my life was for Aunt Dot, who is the matriarch of our family, to talk about her belief in the ways that spirit interacts with us, that angels are all around us. Hearing her say those words, that I believe in angels, she said, and I believe that angels are all around us, and I believe that angels work with us. They're there for us, and to be in her beautiful home laden with angels. And I thought to myself, and where did she learn that? Where did she come upon that? And what part of our ancestry brings with it to these shores the understanding of angels, of spiritual gifts? Good morning, Katie Battle. Good morning to everybody who's listening. It is a beautiful morning. I believe that our ancestors experience life through us and influence the way that we experience life and the questions that we have about life. And I believe that at this time in our earthly evolution, some call it the ascension process, the ascension of our consciousness, of our awareness. Some call it the time of Mitakoye Oyasi. We are all related. One thing DNA testing is revealing to people, and not always making people very happy, is coming to the understanding that we are related. And sometimes the people that we just know we are not related to, all of a sudden are our relatives. And for a lot of people, that's made them go, It's made them scratch their head. For some people, it's made them stomp their feet and wail and shake their fists in the sky. No, I can't be part of that crowd of people. I've spent my whole life saying horrible things about those people. I am one of them. Now what? Right? This time of understanding how much we really are related. Fascinating. I remember years ago being up at Stirling Castle in Scotland. And one of the docents there at King James Castle, vis-a-vis the King James version of the Bible. You wonder where it came from. Good old King James up there in Scotland. Stirling Castle was the editor of that particular version of the Bible. But anyway, there goes the history buff in me, right? I remember one of the docents walking up to me, and he looked at me and he said, "You're Irish." And I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "You must be Irish." I said, "No, I'm not Irish." Well, I was never told that I was Irish. There was no understanding of it at that time. And he said to me, "Well, you look like you're from Ireland. Are you sure?" And I said, "I'm sure. I'm not Irish." Only to find out, I am very Irish. I am very Irish. And Scottish and English and American Indian and African. I always wondered why I was so attracted to Egypt and being with the Egyptian people, and why the Egyptian people, frankly, liked me being there. They recognized me. Very first trip to Egypt. The number of people who asked me if I was Egyptian, if I was African. Isn't it astounding how we're drawn to certain places in the world where our soul feels at home, where the food feels like our food, where the smells feel like comfort, they feel like love, they smell like love. Happy St. Patrick's Day, Katie says. Todd and I were married in Cornwall, England, there at Tintagel, overlooking Merlin's Cave. Now we understand why that is. I often wonder to myself, and this is just how I think about things, because I do believe in reincarnation. I don't believe that we're only here for one rodeo and that's it. If we're to come back for any sort of reason, we come back. And I often wonder if we aren't the ancestors that we've discovered in DNA testing, if we aren't actually those people who have come back in this track of time, finding our joy and finding our comfort and finding our wisdom and our magic in the places that we've known throughout other lifetimes. I believe that to be true. I believe that to be true. So being married in Cornwall, England, traveling around the world to the places that I had no idea that I was blood related to, but the blood of our ancestors is in the lands that we travel to. And at least 500 years of my ancestors' blood and bones from the European side are here in North America. And for my, as Aunt Dot says, American Indian relatives, their blood and their bones have been here forever. And they all met. Sometimes our ancestors will send to us dreams that we may not understand. We may have a dream. Katie says, "Because you're cool, that's why people like you." Well, thank you, Katie. You're cool too. That's why we like each other, because we're both cool, right? We're all cool. In other words, we're willing to take a look outside of ourselves and embrace things maybe that are a bit uncomfortable or stretch us or send us out of our comfort zone with regard to people and belief systems, etc. Oh, that makes for great conversation and great adventures and travel, right? Absolutely it does, in my mind. Our ancestors will send us dreams. They may appear to us in our dreams with a message. And those ancestors may appear to us in ways that seem foreign to us because perhaps we've forgotten where we came from. Sometimes people will say to me in conversation, "Well, there's this old woman who keeps showing up in my dreams. And Dana, I don't know why this woman keeps showing up in my dreams and she looks Celtic. I am not Celtic." Well, maybe you don't know that you're Celtic. Maybe if you take a look at your ancestry or ask some questions about your ancestry, you'll find out that you are very, very Celtic. I'm guessing that woman that keeps coming to you in your dreams is an ancestor, and she's asking you to dig into the Celtic roots of your ancestry, which is why she's dressing as a Celt. In this country, we've lost our magic. Many of us have lost our magic, and so it's been, for many people, piecemealed. A little bit here, a little bit there of the magic, of the ways of healing, of the ways of interacting with our ancestors and our own souls. That magic is what I'm talking about. It's been piecemealed over time. Much of it was left in the old country. Very few had the courage to bring it here and continue with it and teach others. So it's been piecemealed. In many places in Native America, it's been piecemealed. A little bit of here and a little bit of there. And so sometimes now our ancestors are coming to us in visions and dreams to remind us of who we are, of our interconnectedness, that we're not just here materially, but we are here present in this day spiritually and on a soul level. The first time my biological father appeared to me in a dream, those years ago while I was teaching at Olivet, the Great Lakes Retreat, I took notice, and I knew there was a reason that my ancestor was reaching out, because I knew in one way, shape, or form I was going to meet up with my ancestry. And at that time, doing Ancestry.com was not available. 23andMe was not available. No amount of trying to have records unsealed had worked at that point. But something else was going on behind the scenes. The ancestors intervened. My Native American or American Indian ancestors intervened, as most of you know, in 2006 to bring me onto the path of understanding that medicine, that hochoka, that altar of the medicine wheel. Sometimes we can feel, well, hello, Black Dragons Radio. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Many years ago, when Wakian Snamani met me, he was here in Michigan from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And he said to me, Okagashgawi, White Owl Woman, told me that you were coming and I was to teach you the medicine ways. I looked at him and I said, why me? I said, look, have you not looked at me? I'm like your average person here. And I was sharing this with my biological family last week. I said, he looked at me and he said, it's time for you to remember deep in who you are that you are a Native American woman. A long, long time ago, your people were. And he went on in this long lecture, and it's time for you to remember that piece of you. That piece of you. And 13 years later, I still go to Sundance, right? Arval Looking Horse, Ivan Looking Horse, my brother Guy Dullknife. They teach me, they continue to teach me those ways. And even though that isn't the predominant ancestry of my people, it was that one ancestor or two ancestors or 100 ancestors or 1,000 ancestors in my ancestry that said, we're going to come through her. We're going to come through Wakian Towian, Blue Thunder Woman, in this lifetime. And we're going to keep the medicine alive. We're going to keep the spirituality alive through her. And you all know what I mean, that sometimes it's a particular piece of the ancestry that comes through to speak. Anissa is saying the remembering, scary and wonderful all at the same time. That's right. I remember the first time Wakian brought me up to the reservation in South Dakota, and I was in an inipi, a sweat lodge with, it was full of medicine people, of Wakan people, holy people. And he was explaining to them that he was to teach me the ways and that I would help preserve them exactly the way that he taught me. And, I went through this process of training, very rigorous, as you can imagine, for years. But I remember that one time when that particular ceremony was over and I looked at him And if you've ever been in a lodge full of holy people, or medicine people is what they tend to be called, and you get done with that, you are never the same. And I was a disheveled mess way back in spring of 2007. And I looked at him and I said, "Why am I here? Why are you teaching me this?" And he said, "Your skin may be light in this lifetime, but your heart is red. And that's what you need to remember. And don't ever ask me this question again. I'm not going to answer it again." In his very broken English. In his very broken, and I never did. There are some parts of our ancestry that come through us. There are some ancestors that come through. And we wonder why. We wonder why. Well, I understand now why all of that happened and why I continue to carry that chanupa, that sacred pipe. And at the same time, I honor those of my ancestors who came here from the highlands of Scotland and England and the Netherlands and Italy, way back when, in the beginning, Africa. And I honor all of my ancestors, all of my relatives, Mitekoye Oyasi here, that rose up out of this earth here. I don't know why they just picked me to do that. Maybe to remind the others, here I am, here I am. Here in this country, oftentimes we focus on the material. And lately, for many, our souls have said, "But what about me? What about me? What about the magic of my ancestors? What about the medicine? What about the healing? What about the joy? What about the songs?" You know, when I went to my father's grave last Saturday, I'd never been before, of course. And it's a beautiful little cemetery there in Hawkinsville, Georgia. Just outside of Hawkinsville, Georgia, excuse me. And I had a new flag to put on his grave. And as we stood there, Todd sang a sacred song, and he sang it in the Lakota language for my father. He sang it in the Lakota language. And while my father's people are Creek and Cherokee on the soul level, right, the people of that land understood it. And you could feel it in the cemetery as Todd was singing it. It was an honoring song. It's a beautiful song. A song fitting for a warrior in that moment. And he sang it quietly. I heard him. He was standing right next to me. And the wind kicked up a little bit, as it tends to when the sacred songs are sung. I think there's kind of a deprivation that we're experiencing here in the West, and there are those that are rediscovering, that are bringing the magic back to life in a variety of ways. Teaching healing modalities, teaching herbalism. There's so much to the soul and so much to the word magic and the understanding of that. And I don't mean it in simply one way, but I'm talking about it as a collective. The spiritualism, the spiritism, the animism. And it fills our souls when we walk with it in a good way. When we walk and we're proud that our ancestors are with us. For many who came here, they didn't want to admit where they were coming from. So not only did they change their last name, they changed their story. And we can change our story and we can change our last name, but our ancestors are still walking with us. There's Gabriel and Dominic at it again. Our ancestors walk with us. And every amount of healing Every amount of understanding that we come to within ourselves helps to heal them through us. And if you believe that we are walking on all tracks of time simultaneously, or bits and pieces of us are, on the time continuum, there's a continual flow of healing and rebalancing that we, along with our ancestors, experience every time we do, as we put it very simply, because it's not simple, when we do our work, our own personal work, when we come to understand that we are spiritual beings having a sacred earth walk here on Grandmother Earth. Unchimaka has invited us to be here. She is a being in and of herself, a glorious being. And we have been called here for a short visit called a lifetime. And our ancestors who came before, who will continue to come after us, they all live within us in some way, and at different times they speak to us and they speak through us. And we need to pay attention when they come to us in visitations, apparitions, ghost-like moments with them. For some people, it's a freak-out show, right? The moment that an ancestor steps through. So some prefer to come to us in visions and dreams, in meditation times, in quiet times. Sometimes it's just a quiet whisper, a point in one direction or the other. Sometimes it rattles our cages to the point where we have to take a look in the mirror. And that mirror is potent. That mirror, that is the medicine of the Wakian. That is the medicine of the Thunder people. It is reflective. It is destructive. It destroys all that no longer serves in order for that which is to grow, to come forward strong. Right? That reflection, looking at ourselves and going through the mirror, deep down into, I was just teaching with David last week in the medicine of the bear of Mato Wakan and Tob Wakan, the bear medicine, going deep underground into that cave, going into those places that, yes, sometimes angels fear to tread, but when we make that journey, we take that voyage and we come back up, we are never the same. And if we do it thoroughly, we're never the same, but in fact, we're stronger, we're brighter, we're more nourished. Dominic is just having a grand good time in here. My panther medicine is in here. Yes, so the remembering is scary and wonderful all at the same time. Every morning when I come into my office here, I love my office space, and I have one particular altar that is dedicated to the ancestors. And I have bits and pieces of all of my ancestral lineages. And I invite the ancestors, the good, kind, loving ancestors, to come, to be present. To be present for the healing, to be present for the revealing of wisdoms, of spirit, of soul, of stardust. I believe that in the beginning we all came from the stars, from the star people, from the cosmos. Cosmic beings we are, I believe. Pay attention. Make time. Make time. I often wonder when I go to check the little green leaves that pop up on Ancestry, you've got a new potential whatever. I think to myself, how many people are just making a really great family chart? And how many of the people that have joined are actually taking a moment, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a half hour to sit with the people that they've discovered, to sit with them, to invite them in. You don't have to invite all of them. You can make a disclaimer, only the joyful ones, the loving ones, whatever. Because not all of our relatives are always, well-intentioned. That's okay. That's part of the experience. But sit with them. Take out some of the heirlooms in your home, whatever they happen to be. Maybe they are magical. Maybe they are spiritual. Take them out. Sit with them for a minute. Be with it. Be with them. They're within you. Understanding them helps you to understand your own blood, your own bones. How often we talk about the blood that courses through our veins, the bones of our being, and we forget that the blood of our blood and the bones of our bones is ancient. It is stardust. But between the stardust and who we are now, who is that? Who was that? Who is it going to be? That's an exploration in and of itself, and one best taken between ourselves and our ancestors. There's much to learn. It's like that old adage, I wish I would have paid attention when Grandma was speaking. When Grandma was alive, I wish I would have paid attention. Grandpa too, but no, I thought it was just old people talking. Well, there are other ways of learning, of coming to understand, and I believe the time that we're in, that time is calling us to do just that. To be with that. To be with ourselves, to know thyself, right? Healer, heal thyself. Know thyself. That's when we really come to understand that we are all related. As White Buffalo Calf Woman teaches us, Tesawian, White Buffalo Calf Woman, teaches us that we are all related. All that is to be seen and unseen, the creepy crawlers, the ones that fly, the two-legged, the four-legged, in the seen and the unseen, they are all our relatives. Our ancestors knew that. No matter where they came from, our ancestors knew that. And I believe they're trying to teach us that again. But not only teach it, right? As Ma Rita said to my Chue Del Marie, if you're going to say those words, mitakoye oyasi, mitakwiasan, then you better walk them. If you're going to say you're walking the red road way, then you better walk that way. Don't just give lip service to it. If you're going to say we are all related and acknowledge your relatives, then you need to acknowledge that everything is your relative. Ooh, I like that. Not easy to do, though. Much easier said than done. With that, everybody, thank you for joining me here on Exploring Sacred. Thanks for hanging in there this morning when we had to do a little bit of a mulligan, a redo. But with that, honor your bones and your blood. Honor the wisdom, the magic, the soul, the spirit contained within. Honor the stardust that you are. Your ancientness. And the beauty of your ancientness. Thank you all. Have a beautiful day and get out there and shine. Blessings be, everyone.